Hi guys, this is Dr. Aeronautics, and if you're as excited as I am right now, then you're in for a special treat. Today is the big day, the one where we finally go into orbit. I will explain everything that you need to go, to go from the ground all the way up to orbit. We will be in space, both with height and speed. We're going to launch east, and to prove that we reach orbit, I'm going to continue rolling until we reach Florida again. But we will not reach the Kennedy Space Center for reasons partially explained in the last video that will be answered today. So let me fix this again. And I need to restart the video because I forgot the timer. Okay, all set. We don't want that to happen on the big day. Okay, so that was on the map that the issue was, and I will explain that. So let's get started. We need to start the craft up, so we're going to start by shutting the cabin hatch.
Hatch closed.
Okay, and as the creepy computer voice said, the hatch is now closed, so we should be completely isolated from our environment. Good, looks like we are. Okay, so now I'm going to turn all of our lights on, except the docking light, because that won't be needed. And we're all fine up in here. Okay, so now we're going to turn on the multifunctional displays. And this one is the map. And this was where the problem was last time. I explained that there were multiple passes here. And I will explain those once we get into orbit because it will be much easier to see. Also, we need to explain some more of the orbit multifunction display. I'm going to change the frame of reference, the projection method, and the distance version readouts. Okay, so we're going to learn more about orbits today. And I need to explain a few more things. Okay, first of all, last time I told you about the APA, which stands for apogee altitude, the highest part of the orbit. But remember in the other video I said, remember when I told you if the Earth was hollow and we could somehow fall through it, we would fall all the way down and then we'd swing around the center of the Earth and be slung all the way out here, and then this motion would basically occur forever and ever. You would just be doing this, just like the planets are around the sun, but in a highly elongated fashion, like the comets. And I mentioned this circle was the apogee. Now this circle down here is the exact opposite. It's the perigee, and the perigee is the exact opposite of the apogee, which is the lowest part of your orbit. And notice right now it says negative 6.363 megameters or negative 6,363 kilometers. That means underneath the surface, but in reality, because the Earth is approximately 6,370 kilometers, we should expect to see this somewhere around 7 kilometers if we change the altitude readouts from this kind to this kind, remember, which I explained last time. And it looks like I was off by 1 kilometer, which just burns my head. Okay. There you go. 8.5 kilometers from the center of the Earth. And we're in a trajectory right now simply because we're orbiting with a velocity because the Earth is rotating east at 408 meters per second at our present location. So the periapsis altitude, or perigee in the case of the Earth, lists the altitude of the lowest part of the orbit. Now, when we did our ballistics, our apogee was above the Earth, but our perigee never came above the other side of the Earth. In order to actually be in orbit, your perigee must be outside the Earth, therefore assuming two things. One, because the apogee is higher, it is also outside the Earth. And two, since the perigee is the lowest part of the orbit, so is every part of the orbit, and you are effectively falling around a sphere, and you cannot, well, you will crash eventually because of air resistance, but you cannot crash in the meantime, because you are falling outside the domain of the Earth. Okay? And again, altitude is our current altitude here. I already explained apogee altitude. If you don't understand that, you need to watch my last tutorial. And then the next thing that I'm going to tell you is the eccentricity. And that remarks the shape of the orbit. I'm going to start off now with a little bit of simple orbital mechanics, telling you that an orbit can be one of five things: a circle, an ellipse, a parabola, a hyperbola, or a line. One of those five things. A parabola will have an... actually, I'll start from hyperbola. Or a line, actually. A line will have an eccentricity of an undefined amount. It's basically the curvature, a value of the curvature. It will be undefined. It will have no curvature, just like a vertical line in your math class. And then next to hyperbola is defined as having an eccentricity greater than 1. So anywhere between 1 and infinity. And a parabola, if you don't know, looks like this. It's basically a gentle curve. As you graph it, it comes down very quickly, bottoms out at 0, and then increases again up towards infinity. And then you have the parabola, which is an eccentricity of exactly 1. And then an ellipse if it's between 0 and 1, and a circle if it's 0.00 on forever. It's impossible to have a perfectly circular orbit or a perfectly parabolic orbit. But if it's within a certain amount of wave space, like if it's 0.0001, we can basically call that circular because you can't tell. Okay, so next I'm going to explain to you the T, and that stands for time of the orbit, or the orbital period. And it says 1.793, this is in kiloseconds. So if I'm right, that's about half an hour. It should be 7 seconds less than half an hour, actually. And it's telling us how long this swing would be. If we were to fall to the center of the Earth and return, it would take us about half an hour round trip. That's what that's saying. This PET represents the time until we reach our periapsis, which means in 896 seconds of falling down to here, we'll be here. And this is the apopsis time, or apogee time, and it's flashing between 0 and 1793, which, by the way, also note, is our time that indicates we're both at apogee and approaching the next apogee. So it's going crazy because we're at apogee, but we're not moving because we're on the Earth, so it's going crazy. And then this vel here stands for our velocity. Again, it's the same as this. This is just our speed relative to the center of the Earth. Again, with some velocity because we're rotating east. Okay, we're ready to continue. So we have our HUD up. We have this fixed, And now we're going to turn the air flight surfaces on. We will need the reaction control systems later. So just want to check the fuel, which is good. Because after all, we are going into space, which is what it's used for. Okay, step 1. Apply full power.
10, 9, 8. Ignition sequence has started. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. We have commit and we have
I want to
liftoff.
switch this to the surface because we need it for the atmospheric flight. Rotate. And we're going to set our gear up. And so now, like always, we're going to throttle back. But what we're also going to do, I'm not sure if I explained this yet. I feel like I have, but I'm not sure if I have. We're going to turn due east. And what we do by turning due east, we maximize our fuel efficiency and we save fuel because we need less speed to reach orbit. Why is that? Because the Earth is rotating east again. So we already have 407 meters per second. So if you look, this is increasing, while this is barely increasing, because we're turning east. And we're going to continue accelerating away from the Earth. And if we did the exact opposite of this, went west, we would have to kill 407 meters per second and then accelerate again to, it should be 7,800 meters per second that we need to get into orbit. So we're ready. We're going to climb, we're going to set our power to full. And the way this is done initially is by pitching up to 30 degrees. So I'm going to explain the goals that you want to do. The first major step in getting to orbit is to pitch up to 30 degrees. As we gain in altitude, I'm going to continue increasing this to stay outside our horizon lines for orientation purposes. I'm just going to go a little bit higher to 30 degrees. Okay. So we're at about 20,000 feet right now. Oops. Okay. 20,000 feet, and I'm going to put that out to the next level there. And as we lose density in the altitude, in the atmosphere right here because of altitude, we're going to pitch down. And the way you control getting to orbit is by controlling how the pitch works. You want to aim for 20 degrees at 610 meters per second and about 20 kilometers. That's what I use as a general guide. So we're going to hold this because we're not there yet. And you can use the elevator trim over here to adjust this. I'm going to activate our scram engines now so that we can actually save fuel efficiency right now. And we can gain a little bit of power by using them and also burn off a little bit of extra fuel. Okay, so now we're coming up on 20 kilometers and 600 meters per second, so I'm going to let this drop now. Our next goal is going to be about 10 degrees, 1,000 meters per second, and 27 kilometers. By the way, 27 kilometers is approximately 90,000 feet. Okay, we're looking good in this department. Okay, we're just about on schedule. So we're now at 10 degrees. This ends getting out of the atmosphere. So what we're going to do, because the dynamic pressure is going down along with the density, remember what I told you during the during the last tutorial, we lost complete control of the air flight surfaces. So I'm going to start by activating the reaction control system now.
Rotation.
And now we're going to switch to the orbit MFD. And this looks different now because we have a certain velocity now. Now I'm going to watch the Scram engines are not doing, yeah, they're actually, let's see how they're doing. They're giving us a little bit of speed, but eventually they're going to stop. Okay, so, okay, this is just like in our ballistics. Remember, in our ballistics, we allowed this to go below the horizon, but we need to stay above. So because of that, we're going to maintain pitch so that this, which is our apopsis time, is always going up. If it goes down, then it means we're going to crest, and then once that happens, we run the risk of re-entry, which is the plasma cloud. So the goal is to reach orbital velocity, which is 7,800 meters per second at approximately 60 kilometers. I like to reach that at 60 kilometers because it offers a excellent climb out for circularization, which I'll explain later. And again, to tell when we're in orbit, we're watching this circle here, which is going to continue migrating out from the center of the Earth. We reach orbit when the periapsis or perigee comes outside of the surface of the Earth. Again, also meaning that everything else is outside of the surface of the Earth. Okay, so this is going slightly down, so I'm going to adjust the trim up a little bit. And I'm going to check on our scram or off, so I'm cutting them. They're doing absolutely nothing. I'm also going to adjust that, and here's that annoying reflection thing again. It's going to take a while to reach orbit from now, and we're getting a little bit of plasma, so I'm going to just pitch up a little bit. We're going to come higher out of the atmosphere where the air is thinner, and then we shouldn't be affected by that. So we're going to keep an eye on that speed. It should be about 7,800 or 7,900 because we're just coming to orbit. And we're watching this value here to get above zero. I think I almost got to it, but not quite. The thing that you need to watch is that because this is going to rotate out here, because the apogee is leading us, that means that if we continue burning, our periapsis will rotate to us, and it's going to cause a huge waste in fuel. So the way we do it is we cut our engines, again, just like the ballistics, but this time we're going all the way into orbit. So we cut our engines just like we were doing ballistics, but this time we wait until we reach apogee, which is going to be somewhere out here, and then we burn again. When we burn again, that will raise the lower part of the orbit, and instead of returning, we'll return around, effectively being in orbit. So I'm going to notch this out again. Notice how with these, each one occurs west of the other one by a set amount. The reason this happens is because the Earth is rotating east. Again, rotation offers so many other aspects of orbital mechanics that wouldn't originally be the case. And each of these is evenly spaced because what's happening is every time we go back down and then return to the surface, the Earth will have rotated east relative to where we are. So the next pass we come will be here. And then the next pass we come is here. And then the next one will be here. When we fully reach orbit, all of these broken lines here will eventually become a smooth connected weave of a single line that will over time adjust its period so that it meets up with the next, so that the end of one meets up with the beginning of the next. And you will see that when we reach orbit. You can see now our eccentricity is below 0.5, which means it's becoming quite egg-shaped. Our apopsis time is doing good, and we're coming up on our targeted altitude, so I'm going to start relieving pitch pressure. Okay, so assuming our apogee will remain in front of us, which it will, because that's how I get to orbit, that's how you should as well. When this reaches 250 kilometers, that will be plenty high to orbit for a week in this craft. So once we reach 250, that's going to be our target altitude for this orbit. We're going to turn it off, and that's basically going to say we're going to continue flying up until we come back down at 250 kilometers, and then we're going to burn from there to circularize. Coming up on 60 kilometers, again relieving pitch pressure. I'm also going to go out to the next level of zip. We're getting close, 6,400 meters per second, and the shape is becoming quite circular. Again, I'm going to check our fuel, and we're doing pretty well. Remember what I told you? An infinite distance with a finite amount of fuel? That's about to pay off when this goes outside, and then we can traverse the Earth hundreds if not thousands of times, and because of the rotating Earth, we get to see every part of the Earth between this latitude and this latitude. So we'll cover everything in here if you stay up here long enough. Okay, there's target altitude, relieving all pitch pressure now. Ahead of us is the constellation Orion. Oh shoot, bad timing. Okay, I caught it. That was close because this is the most critical phase. You can see now that this is nearly circular. By the way, this is paused so I can explain it. This is nearly circular, and this is jumping out in front of us. Now, because this is circular, you're going to watch as our perigee starts to rotate towards us, and this is going to climb very quickly. It'll climb exponentially, like it'll say 72, and then 75, and then 80, and then 100, and then 150, 200, 300. So we're going to start throttling down very soon. Okay, 72, 75. There's 80. You can see the swing now. That's 100. Okay, I'm beginning to throttle back now. We're getting close. 150. 200. Almost done. Main engine cutoff. Okay, we're now at 67 kilometers and we're climbing very quickly. We're at 7,500 meters per second, which is quite a bit slower than I expected. But I suppose that's because we're not circularized yet. You can see this is still changing even though our engines are off. That's because we're being dragged down by the residual air pressure which still exists. And there's still quite a bit of dynamic pressure here. There's about 2 kilopascals worth of it. So just like our ballistics video, we're now going to go all the way over here. And now look at this. If we do nothing, we're going to not only cross the Atlantic Ocean, but according to the ground track, we're going to go all the way over to New Zealand, north of New Zealand. We're going to come down in the Pacific Ocean. And you can see how far we're going to go now on just that little amount of fuel. We spent the same amount of fuel just trying to go to Charleston. And now we're long beyond it. and are virtually going to be unlimited by our distance. And because we're losing just about all control of our air flight surfaces now, I'm turning them off. Also, because we're in space now, officially, I'm going to change the HUD color to my favorite space color, which is green. And you can see, I hope you agree with me, the green looks so much better against the black background. It's not the same. You can barely see this pitch ladder here because of the color of the atmosphere. But green and black go really well together. You can easily see it, and it kind of gives a space agey feel for it. So we're kind of in a cruising phase, and of course I'm going to time accelerate soon so that we don't have to go through this. But I just need to explain a few other things. First of all, notice we're not in orbit yet. We're close, negative 42 kilometers, which is about in the lithosphere of the Earth, a molten rock layer. But because that's solid, obviously, we can't traverse through it. So like I said, what we're going to do is we're going to wait for us to shoot all the way out to the apogee, and right before we start coasting back in, we're going to prevent that by burning around. And you can do that by firing your engines again along with our velocity. Now, this marker here indicates the direction of movement relative to the ground. But because the ground isn't the source of the gravity, if we tried to maneuver using that, we would find ourselves not being able to work. Just broke 101 kilometers. So what we'll find is because the Earth is, because we're slightly inclined, you would find that the direction of motion is actually going to be a little bit over here. And if we switch over to our orbit, you can now see that is actually over here. And so obviously I thought wrong about that. Now I'm just trying to figure out if I had disoriented myself or as if my hypothesis was wrong. For that, I'm going to need to zoom in. Oh, yes. It was just my judgment was wrong. I was disoriented. Notice how this is further over here. That's because we're traveling this direction, not this direction. And because of that, our orbital path markers further north. So now I've switched us off to the orbit HUD. We're now going to use this, and we're not coming onto the surface anymore. So we're going to ignore that. Okay, so this is why I got confused. We hadn't yet switched over. There's 7,800 like I had expected. And this is our distance from the center of the Earth, which now happens to be 119 kilometers in altitude. If you want to keep track of the altitude, you can look right here. And this is our surface speed. This will stay up throughout the course of the flight. So to further orient ourselves and gain control, is that still the constellation Orion? No, that's now up here. We've now come over it. We're approaching Ascension Island now in the Atlantic Ocean. It's going to be somewhere down here. I don't think we can yet see it yet. But we're going to turn orbit prograde to align with our prograde velocity vector. And now very, very soon you're going to get used to seeing the Earth over here on the left side of my screen. That's because I like to face prograde whenever there's not any critical event which makes me face another direction. So like I said, we're going to fast forward. But instead, Never mind. I was going to suggest that we do the math to figure out. It's simple enough. I'll do the big calculation and then explain what I got from it. Okay, so I did one calculation, and that was basically to find the speed that we would need to orbit here. But because I also need to do the calculation to figure out what our velocity will be over here, I don't want to get that complex, and especially not in these early tutorials. So what we're going to do is fast forward until we get reasonably within a certain amount of distance, because I really want to circularize this. So, what is that, the Canary Islands? Something like that. We're getting close to Africa. So what I'm going to do now is first of all deactivate prograde. Remember what I guys told you about my first, well, my 0th, I guess, tutorial. The joke one. We always come off of our autopilots before we make the maneuvers, because remember what I did when we went up to 10,000 and pressed a button? We spun out of control. And that would happen here. So I'm going to accelerate until we peak. The line is vertical at the 12 o'clock position. And then we're going to do the calculation, because I don't want to figure out what my velocity is here. I'm just going to wait for it. There's 10x, there's 100x. I prefer 100x when I'm maneuvering. That way, it's not too fast, but it's approximately a good speed. Okay, so let's go ahead and say that we're going to be at 7,670 meters per second. We're going to come down a little bit because we're going higher, which means the gravity is being weaker, and we're slowing down. That will be much more evident in our orbital mechanics video. And you can notice here that we're no longer facing this direction because we've been perturbed for a number of various reasons. We're so low right now that it's probably mostly due to air drag and less of gravity gradient torque and radiation pressure, especially not because we're perpendicular from the sun. Okay, so we need 84 meters per second worth of fuel. And I'm going to take a guess that we're probably going to be able to accelerate. I forgot to check this, but we're probably going to accelerate. I forget what the power of the engines are. I know I can look it up, but I don't want to get too detailed about this. But if we say 10 meters per second, that's going to be 8.4 seconds divided by 2. So we're going to start burning when this says 5 seconds. And that is the time to apogee, which is the time to circularize. You notice right here, these squares here end and it's gone. That's because if we don't do anything, we will crash into the ground. But we're about to fix that right now. We will truly and duly be in space once these lines connect. And, of course, they have to be out of the atmosphere, so at least 120 kilometers. But I want to try and circularize as much as I can. So we're going to wait for the time to tick down to 5. I'm not going to accelerate this time because we're so close. Oh, it's nighttime now. Where is this? Southeast Asia? No, actually, it's still Africa. I didn't know it was that late. Okay, we need to align prograde now because our time is now. Took a little bit longer than I expected. Bang! Okay, so we overshot a little bit. But you saw how close this got. It got to 0.0001. And now it's saying 0.002. Was 3. And we can't get it perfect because of the perturbations. And you can see it's happening again. It'll continue to happen because we're so low. But look, we've just reversed our position. Now our hypothesis is over here because I continued burning, so that this is the higher point of the orbit. We're now not going below 246 kilometers again, and we're going up to 248. And look, the circle does not touch the Earth. And over here, we are actually and truly in orbit. I say welcome to orbit. And now you can see this line over here will come up to here and become this next line, which will go up to here and become this next line. And then that will end over here. So now you can see how this is a complete interwoven weave, which is changing because the Earth is rotating underneath of us. So basically, I wanted to explain the quick mechanics of that burn because that was our first orbital transfer. The next tutorial will be on orbital transfers. And basically what we did was we added what's called a delta V. We talk about delta V when we talk about maneuvers that involve adding or subtracting linear velocity in some sort of vector direction. In this case, the vector of thrust was in the exact same as the prograde velocity vector, thus adding our components. And let me see if I can get those to display. Okay. Yeah, it will only display our acceleration vectors. So I can't unless... Oh, man! Well, I should have used this! Oh my gosh, I'm sorry, but this is a massive troll. Remember earlier when I was explaining you the Z direction and the Y direction, the X direction? Look. Plus Y, plus Z, plus X. I didn't even have to say anything. There it is. So you can easily see it now. And there's your negative. There's your negative axes. See, just like I said. What the heck? Oh my gosh. Oh, that is a huge troll. I hope that has cleared it off. If you guys haven't understood it, I hope you guys get it now, how those directions work. Wow. I completely forgot those existed. But what we did was we added a plus Z. Let's do the negative axis. We did a plus Z maneuver, which added to our velocity. And because of that, if I zoom all the way out now, let me just fix that. There we go. We can turn these off now. Okay. If we were to zoom all the way out, you should be able to see the Earth now, but you can't see us, which should be here. So what we're doing now, or what we did was, we were going to fall like this, exaggerated, and then we burned again. We fired with a little bit more velocity, and now we're going around the Earth. So that's how that works. This is South Africa, I think. Nope. It's too dark for me to tell, really. That's Madagascar. Close enough. Okay. And now you can see our eccentricity is nearly zero, which again, that means a circular orbit. Okay, so I think we'll call it there. I'm going to take it off of the prograde. Actually what we are going to do is deploy the radiator. And the radiator is used for cooling the vital systems. Because there's no air, now the only way we transfer heat onto the environment is by radiations. And so to improve that radiative ability, because there's no air, which means conduction or convection can't happen, the only heat transfer is by radiation. So what we do is we put our coolant loops through these radiators, and it basically radiates the temperatures of the
Deployed.
systems. Okay, that was telling me the radiator got deployed. it radiates the heat of the systems out into space, into this darkness here, so that they don't overheat. And as you'll see on the more advanced models, if you don't deploy the radiator, bad things will happen. So we're going to call it there. We're not going to leave orbit because that's a completely different tutorial. But this is Dr. Aeronautics above the Indian Ocean saying welcome to orbit. I hope you guys enjoyed this. For the next tutorial, because it's orbital transfers, I'm just going to save it here, and we'll begin again and do an orbital transfer from here to somewhere else. So I will see you guys back here next time for the next tutorial on orbital transfers. Take care.